got Grandma's 2013 Subaru Crosstrek. We did a test drive. We got a grind. It mostly sounds in the right front, but I've already started on that one. I'm over to the left side now, driver's side, and I removed the wheel. We've got the caliper. It's a 14 millimeter, 2 bolts. We got it hanging up here so there's no pressure on the hose. The other side, the caliper did not want to go and return back with a clamp on it, so I just stopped. I'm going to replace both calipers. That's probably the reason why the pads wore right down to the metal. This side is pretty good. This rotor looks decent. The other side's shot. The next, I got to remove the caliper bracket. That is a 17 millimeter. And well, the next thing is I forgot to mention is the backing plates are rubbing on the rotor, and it drove you nuts. They're all rusted out. To get them out, you got to take all this apart. There's only 65,000 miles on the car, but it's a 13. Might as well do the wheel bearings because you got to pull the wheel bearings to put a backing plate in. The bolts go right through it. So this is a big project. We're up in New York with a rust belt. I know this isn't good for the wrench, but you can't put a socket in here because your strut bolt's in the way. Real good designing. So I'll beat on the old wrench here. Take out these 17 millimeter bolts for the caliper bracket, and then we can remove the rotor. I'll probably end up removing the vehicle speed sensor here too, so there's no damage on it. But it's much easier. This one I could get an impact on, but once I get them loose here, put a ratchet right on it, and we'll get these out of the way. If they had assembled these from the factory with some anti-seize on everything, I wish all vehicles were like that. These parts would come apart good. If we're in Florida, they'd come apart without a hammer probably. But I'll have a big pile of rust here in a minute. And when I get all this apart, I'm going to spray the 4 wheel bearing bolts. And they're a terrible design also because the threads come through the front of the spindle about 1/4 of an inch. And so that builds right up with rust, making them hard to come out. I'll show you that in a minute. So you get this caliper off of here, this bracket. And keep the pads right in there for now. We've got slotted rotors. Got a pretty good price on them on Amazon. And they're drilled and slotted to cool. The pads are beveled ceramics, so they should be quiet. And then see, we can remove this as a pair here. And then set these aside. The bolts. Okay, then this is your backing plate. Pretty rough shape. You don't need any tools taking this off. Just cut yourself probably. Alright, now this is what I'm talking about right here on them 4 bolts. It's a poor design with this backing plate squished in there. They should be on with separate bolts and you don't have to deal with the bearings. Another way to sell parts. And then, so we got to spray this up, and we're still going to have to beat on it. Now we're getting out the best tool in New York called PB Blaster. And this is probably the best penetrant for this. I used to use Thrust. I don't know who has that anymore. But the blaster foams. And I'm going to spray up everything. Everything is assuming that I have to take apart to get in there. Just let everything soak here. Get the 4 bolts. And we got the speed sensor. We'll have to remove the axle nut. They're torqued about 180 foot-pounds. And so now I will removed the nut on the front, and they got it peened over in that slot. We can either replace them or just bend it back. It's got the factory paint on it there still. We bend this out. Use an impact, it's not super necessary, but we just bend that out a little bit. Almost. I think the nuts range up to $7 if you want to buy a new one. And then they're about 180 pounds. Let's see if it'll come right off. And then when you put it back on, you just peen it back over in the slot. Unless you want to put a new one in. Make sure your axle pushes back, which it does. And like I said, I want to remove the wheel sensor because I'm worried about breaking it. That's a 10 millimeter. Just use a 10 millimeter on a 1/2 inch drive here. The computer senses a wheel rotating. You see all that rust, the socket don't even want to fit on there. And then a little trick I learned years ago was if you can tighten a bolt, you can loosen it. If it doesn't tighten, then be careful. Tighten a little bit. There's tension on it. Back and forth. Usually shakes the rust off. It's a delicate part. We don't want to break it. Do that a couple times. And we can get this bolt right out of there. And then what I like to do is spray them up. You scrape the rust off, spray them up, and then use a pair of vice grips and snap on gently and gently pull them up out. This rust, upstate New York. I'm going to try to save Grandma at least $500 probably by replacing all these parts. And dealers have markups. And if they weren't rusted, I could probably do both sides in about 2 hours, but it's difficult. Well, there's that. That bolt's pretty good shape. Now I want to take a little scraper, scrape a little rust, get a little groove started around the sensor. And then spray it with a blaster. And then take our vice grips and we'll gently snap on there. Don't want much pressure on it. Just enough to give it a twist. See if she breaks free. And it doesn't wanna. Of course, I don't want to break it off, but you have a chance of breaking it by removing the wheel bearings, so I like to get it out of the way. And I got it moved loose. There's another squirt. And we get it out of there without damage on it. Get looser. There she is. And then this is a magnetic. It gets a little impulse, so every time the wheel turns, there'll rust on it. I think this is pretty good shape put back in there. But if I put it up out of the way, won't get damaged during our work here. Alright. Now, we already realized that this is free. You don't have to remove the axle, you just have to be careful not to rip the boot. You don't want to rip the boot on this. If you can push it back and then get access to these 4 bolts. See the rust on them I'm talking about. What I've learned is spray them, spray them, spray them. You can't put heat on them. You're going to heat up you heat up the axle and everything. You can't do that. I do like to take a hammer and come and vibrate it. Vibrate the rust off a little bit. You can get in there. That helps a little bit, I think. And then get in there and do another one of these blasters. And we want to get it, right here is your backing plate, what's left of it. And that's in between the bearing. And we have to separate that knuckle. So now the back of these are 14 millimeter. And you don't need an impact socket or an impact, but the vibration from an impact might help. See if I can fit it in, but see, there's usually not room. See, it touches the boot. It's these designers, if they made the knuckle a little bigger or smaller, make the knuckle bigger, we could fit it in between the axle. But if you could use a 6-point socket is best than a 12. Put her on in there. Make sure you're on good. Beat on your wrench a little bit. And then I like to use a little pry force here. Get this in a better position. And again, I'd like to tighten before I loosen. If I can tighten it, it tells me that we can break this rust free here. And it'll come out. So let me see if I can get it a little tighter. Okay, I just saw a bubble come out of there. I'll loose a little. See if I can. Yeah, if you could look on this side right here, this is the bolt. And like I said, we got New York rust. If you look right there, you can see the movement. There she goes, yeah. So now, because there's rust, I don't want to bring all the rust back through the threads, so tighten her back up, break that rust off, and loosen her back up again. And then, there we go. That one's freed up. And then if I can stick the impact on there, I might be able to fit it. There's not a lot of room under here. Speed this along. Of course, I couldn't find my 3/8 impact this morning, so I gotta use the big one. Push this axle back. See, they never put any NICs from the factory, so they just rust right in there. These designers. So what I'm going to do at the end is I'll put it in a wire wheel and then I'll move it up good before she goes back together. Now, because the wheels turn to the right, we're going to do both of these left sides right now, the back ones, and then we'll turn the wheel the opposite direction and do the other one. This, I can almost fit a ratchet on it, probably not. And hit the bottom of the strut here. Let's see what happens. Yeah, you can. Alright, I want to tighten before I loosen. I'm going to look right right here and see if we can break that one free. Make sure we're on there good. And I don't know how many other people that live in these salt states salt the roads so much here. I'm working on the rusty cars. The body on this is perfect, but the undercarriage bolts and things, you know, they don't undercoat them and paint them up and lube them up. Alright, I didn't see it tighten, so let me get another wrench on that. Get in there. Yeah, it tightened. So, one more shot of our Lovejoy here, right? Nothing. Go through gallons of this on a rusty car. Alright, now this should back off. Yeah. Pretty easy. Tighten before you loosen. I've learned that a long time ago. I broke off a lot of bolts. If you can tighten it, almost 99% of the time it should come out. If you don't tighten, you better wait. Oh, you need the impact on this one. It's coming right up nice. By hand. But the biggest part on these Subarus is getting that knuckle, the bearing itself, out of that hub. They do make a special tool. I think it's 160 bucks. And I made my version of it to do the back bearings last year for her, my mother. And it bent still. It was just a big process. Alright, this is almost out. Push this axle back a little. Get it. So the time is getting the rusted parts out, that's all. Once we can get it. There she be. See the difference? The first bolt is like that. The second one is like that. They don't lube them. Okay, now I need to turn the steering wheel so I get access to the front two bolts. I can leave the caliper hanging and just cut the wheel. Alright, we're back. I cut the wheels to the left so that I get access to the front two bolts now. They're pretty rusty, you know. And there's not a lot of swinging room in here. Got the tie rod here. But I'm going to see if I can reach this little bar in there. Yeah, that's good. We're away from the fender. This is rubber anyway. Let's see if we can tighten and look right there. See if we can break that rust free. Yeah, you see it pop? I think that blaster helps a lot. Alright, so if I can loosen it a little. Yep, see it break right off there. Yep. We'll get out our friend again. Bye-bye. Oh, top falls off. And then of course we broke it here, right? There we go. Keep throwing the blaster on it. Okay. And this is coming right out too, so in good shape. Alright, we got 3 out of 4. Usually one gives us a hard time. I hope that first one was a hard one with a rust on it. Because this is coming out pretty easy too. The top ones. It seems like the water probably rests in here in the salt, you know, calcium from the road. And probably rust them bolts up more than the top ones. Let's see what we got here. So this one come right out. See that? That's no rust on this one. Just on the very outside because I got a bad design. Alright, what do we got here? You can get to this one. This is a tough one usually. This is a knuckle. Or the CV shaft's in the way a little bit. Alright, that feels like it's on. And then, what did we learn? Tighten before you loosen, right? That's even with an impact, I do that. I can get a little bit right here on that bolt. Yep, she popped. Rust flakes off. Look at that. Alright. So we don't hurt the threads. You know, when you got rust on the threads, you're bringing it back through. Sometimes rounds the bolt off, so I want to keep that thing squirted. Alright, this will be the fourth and last bolt. And the shortcut here is we don't have to take off the ball joint. We take off the nut for the axle and drive it back. Of course, you have to take that off here anyway. But the CV shaft can stay in the car. You don't have to remove that. And we don't have to do an alignment. We don't need to do anything else other than just the brakes parts we put back together. And then after I get this out, I'm going to start beating. Here it is. See, this one's not rusted either. So that's good. Now the next thing is you want to make sure the axle's free. And we got to come in here. Now that this vehicle speed sensor's out of the way, there's no way to damage it. We got to break this knuckle right here. This is your wheel hub. This is your bearing. And it's got your backing plate stuck in there, what's left of it. And this is the original one, remember? So that supposed to keep the crap off it. Yeah. So I'm going to take an impact after that. It's like a chisel bit, and I'm going to start beating on it. Then I take a hammer and I tap right here because the bearing's bad anyway. Get a little vibration going in here. Okay. And then I'm going to put the chisel up here, and it's quite loud. I'm going to see if I can make a groove. And if I make a little groove, then the PB blaster will fit down in there. Let's do this a few times, see if it helps. That wants to walk on me, so come over here. Doing it in the top because then it gets stuck there and it won't walk out on me. And then we get out our favorite tool, the blaster. The more the merrier. Get it soaking down in there. If I had a lot of time, I would have taken this apart yesterday and let it soak, and it may come off a lot easier. But who has that kind of time? Hopefully this won't be a bear. If we were in Florida, these would have been off already. my ears. Is it hurting yours? Okay, now a little more of our famous. And then we're going to try the old Big Stir hammer here. There she be, did you see it? She popped right loose there. I can now fit a screwdriver in there. So I just have to make sure the axle stays back, and I try to come off kind of even. And if we look right here, we look right in here really close, you can see the wear on that wheel bearing. There's out here just a little bit. Look straight down in there, right down in here. Let me tilt that up a little higher for you. There we go. And then, see, this walks back and forth. Let's see if I can get a good view. And you can actually hear it too. There is some play in the wheel bearing, even though that when I rotated it and I test drove it and I rolled the car, you know, I'm driving 20 miles an hour, 10 miles an hour, and I turn to the right and I turn to the left. There's no woo growl sound. That usually tells you wheel bearing. But because these backing plates, and we got 65,000 miles, might as well do them. It's a good thing. They probably would have lasted a couple more years, but we'll get them out of there. We got some nice new ones we'll put in. Alright, now bigger pry bar. Get something down in here. And then, like I said, make sure the axle's back. Can't hurt anything. And then just get that rust broke. We'll get our famous blaster. And this is all going to be sanded out, cleaned out. Make sure the axle's cleaned off. Get this all cleaned before it goes back together. But for now, let's get this thing apart. Do what you gotta do sometimes. Alright, I keep checking the axle so she don't get tight on you. And then, see that come right off nicely. And there's all that corrosion. Here's your bad backing plate in here. And the rust, see the rust got to the edge of the wheel bearing. And the play in the wheel bearing, you can hear it. So it is quite bad. Like I said, I couldn't hear it on the road test. Now what we have to do is we'll file this surface, because this allows rust to settle in here. And inside here, along this ring, all the debris that settles down in here and rusts up. So we're going to clean this all up, put it all back together, put a new wheel bearing in it, new rotor, calipers. We got to do a pair of calipers, and Grandma will be having a new brake job in no time. Okay, now I'm just checking the parts in here. There's a little bit of water that got beyond this ring, and a little bit of rust in here. I just want to let her soak good, get any chips out of there. And then I like to run a file across this surface here where the new bearing is going to ride, so it's perfectly true. And we check to see if we heard anything when we disassembled the wheel bearing. And files are nice and flat, and you can see there's no damage on this hub. And then the new one will bolt up and be super flat on the surface. And then I want to get all this debris out of here and wash it up. Probably spray some brake clean in there before I bring out the new. See, I want to see that ring has a little bit of debris on it. I want to make sure there's nothing in there. Perfectly clean before we put the new bearing in. We'll get out our famous spray because I love this stuff. It kind of eats away any rust, helps wash away debris. I like brake cleaner too, but it doesn't, it cleans, it doesn't lube. Okay, so I'm going to let this drip dry, and then I'll be ready to come back and put in the new bearing here and backing plate. Just a minute. Yeah, it looks good. Okay, we're back here at these wheel bearing bolts, and 3 out of 4 look really good. One has got some rust on. I want to clean these up. So I like to come in here and get that extra thread. The thread that sticks out past the end, it makes it hard to start the new ones. So I snap them in vice grips and just one at a time. And then I'll lube them up before I put the bearings in. But that way we know the threads are going to be in good shape. So they look pretty decent that way. And this is, I don't know if you can get a good picture, but there's some debris on the end of that bolt here. I'll just clean them threads up now. And then we're back to the last one. It's the rusted, more corroded one. We're going to clean up the shoulder and all on this one. We'll clean up the end good. So we get the bolt nicer. I want them threads to really catch and hold. Alright, see, I can see all the thread now. I'm quite happy with that. And well, it looks in pretty good shape there. I'll lube them up and they'll all be the same. Alright, we got some parts here. I purchased some GT rotors that fit the Subaru. They're slotted and drilled. What they do is they help the rotor cool, so it should help from warpage, and it should stop better. It shouldn't get as hot. And then we got some ceramic pads that are beveled and slotted, so they shouldn't catch the debris too bad. We've got our backing plate direct from Subaru. Got a good price on that one. I think it was like 45 bucks for a pair of them. And then we got our wheel bearing complete with hub, and that's what we're going to put in now. The tops of these, here's a part number, but the tops of these are narrower, and the backing plate goes towards the front because your caliper's in the back, and this little recess is for your tie rod end, so it goes on like this. And what I like to do is pick on this old Japanese grease for a Japanese Subaru. I like to put this on for assembly. Helps things slide in easier. Don't need a lot, but just get a little bit of lube. And I like to put it right on the shoulder. That way this will draw in without a lot of friction. You know, you saw me sanding on that, and I got it pretty clean. But I definitely want to give it as much help as possible here to get it together smooth and even. And that should help it. And then we take the 4 bolts that we cleaned up. Oh, before I clean my hands, now I'll put a little Japanese grease on them. A little bit of assembly lube. Anti-seize will probably work. Hopefully this car won't need another wheel bearing. This will be better than last time, having no lube on them. So get all 4 of these ready. These are the 14 millimeter. We want to use a 6-point socket on. Alright, so we make sure our axle's back and free out of the way. When we put our hub in, we got to line up the splines with these. This is splined. So we take our backing plate, face it in the right direction, put it right over like that, line her up. Line this hub right on, the small end up, get it on your axle, tilt this up, and get it as close as you can. Let's see where the holes go, right here. Get it as close as you can without any tension on your axle. And then see if you can start your bolts by hand. See if that's going to be a project. And we've got to turn the hub a little. It wants to be difficult now. We got to, there we go, turn it a little, line her up. And we'll take our socket, see if we can start them by hand. Our 14 millimeter. And then just stay away from your boot on your axle so you don't harm it, scratch it, or rip it. And then this is starting right into here. Feels it anyway. Yep, and you can see it coming through. So that's good. Now I'll start a second one. I'm going to take this one that had a little corrosion on it and put it to an easier hole to get to, which is maybe down here. Same thing, see if we can get her started in that backing plate and then right into the bearing. Looks like she's going. Feels like she's going. And then what I could probably do, go ahead and tighten it up a little bit by hand. That'll help start to draw that bearing in. Yeah, she's there. So now I want to check my axle. Make sure there's, see that the axle has play. So there's no tension on the axle. Zoom that in a little farther. Come up to the top one, get that one too, before I move to the other side. And then, there she comes. That lube's going to help. It's not the best lube probably, but... Alright, so these I probably can't get till I straighten the wheel out. So I probably will run these in farther by hand, so I don't have to keep turning the wheel. See, they're coming through the front now. So I got them in there 3/4 of the way. There, and then let's see if we got any tension. Well, there's a little tension on that. Let's see if we take the hammer handle. Alright, there's a little tension, so I'm going to back her up. Like that. See if that helps it. Alright, the axle just moved, so we're probably in good shape for that. And alright, and then see, neither side line back up with that. So check that axle again. Let me straighten the wheel out. Now we want to go on, and we got to check, make sure our axle's free in here still, which it is. And we take our axle nut, put that on there. Sometimes they line up exact to the old knock-in. Usually not. Everything's a little different. And then I'll come back and I'll torque that to 180 foot-pounds. And then I'll knock the link in with a punch right into there. That'll lock that nut on. And then we'll come back. We'll be working on these caliper brackets. Make sure these slides are lubed up. These are pretty good. This side, the pads happen to be good shape, but we're going to put news on. It will not ride right if you don't put all new parts on both sides. So we'll come back when we're going to do new calipers. We'll bleed the brakes. We'll put them all on. And Graham will be back in business. Okay. On the pads, the little trick to them is that little spring I was showing you. You just pull it back slightly, take some tension off, and the pads slide right in. And this bright sun made it so I couldn't see it very well. But that was pretty simple. Now I'm just tightening up the caliper here. And then what I want to do after that is I want to take the brake hose off in the old rusted up caliper and transfer it, and then we will bleed the brakes, pump up a pedal. That'll be kind of nice. And get Grandma's car back to her. Give her her Hot Wheels back. Okay, these look fine. Not turned. Checking to make sure. Okay. See how that moves back and forth. There's no binding. Everything's good. Okay. And when we come back, we'll do some brake hose. Alright, here's the old caliper. Gonna drain the rest of the fluid out of it here. Pretty much done. And then got the new caliper, the new hose. There's no leakage under it. And checked it all over good. Got her snug with some new washers. Checked it with a flashlight. The painted surface is all clean. Now what you do is you take, what I like to do is have it gravity bleed first. Is what you do is you loosen up the bleeder port. It's a 5/16. Loosen this up. Then the caliper will fill with brake fluid. Get this really loose. It should start bubbling, starting to fill the chamber up, 2 pistons there, and then it'll start bubbling. Fluid will come out, and I'll keep topping off the fluid up here if need be. And it may take a minute. It may not even come out, but we'll see. This hasn't gone down any. Sometimes you actually have to step on the brake pedal, but I can't do that because the other side's still apart. But if you can gravity bleed, that'll push most of the air out, and then you can pump the pedal when you're done. There she comes, see it? When you get a steady flow of fluid, they put the bleeder at the very top. Shouldn't be any air in it when we get a steady flow of fluid. And the little tiny bubble there. Still more bubbles. Start to tighten this up a little bit. Got most of it out. Now I don't see any. So I'm going to go ahead and tighten that up. And then what we'll do is we'll finish pedal bleeding it at the end. You know, it's just fluid now. So let me tighten this up. Top off the master. Then we can head to the other side. We've got one side complete here. Only thing left to do once we pump a pedal is to bleed it and finish torquing up our axle to 180 foot-pounds. Okay. Okay, we're back over on the passenger side. And this is the side that the wheel bearing was a little worse shape. The backing plate was worse. The brake pad was nothing, down to metal and grinding. And the caliper, the pistons had popped out all the way, so it was undrivable. And now I put the new caliper on. Now I'm going to gravity bleed the fitting on this side, and that should bleed off most of the air. The fluid should come down, fill the caliper, and then bubble out the top here like the other side. I don't know if you can see that. And we loosen this up quite a ways and see if we can get some fluid to flow here. Oh, it's coming right away, so that's good news. And it's nice and clean, see it? So it looks like water, but not 3 fluid. And so what I want to do with that is, see, there's a little air bubble, see it? Oh, a little burp. I want to tighten this up just a little bit so it only comes out the bleeder, not the threads. And then if we could look here close, we might be able to see a little bubble. Here's a burp. And now it's solid fluid. Well, so let me tighten that up. And what that should do is give us an instant brake pedal, but I still want to bleed them. So I'll have my son pump the pedal and I'll crack them open and bleed it. I'm happy there's no leaks. The pedal pumps up. I can rotate the axle right now. Once we pump it up, the pads will come out, touch the rotor. And being new in sliders, they should back off, but it should be able to stop the rotor and then release the rotor. So back up to the master, we'll fill it, we'll pump, and then we'll bleed them. Okay, I'm ready to pressure bleed these brakes. I got my son in there. What I want him to do is press it down, hold it. I want to make sure this fitting's tight. All right, we're ready to bleed these brakes out. I got my son in there. He's going to pump the pedal, and I'm going to break the bleeder loose. So push the pedal down, let up, push the pedal down, let up, push the pedal down and hold it. And it should go all the way to the floor this time. I'm going to open the bleeder. And out she came. Hold it down. Now I'm going to tighten the bleeder up. Okay, let up. Push it down. Let it up. Push it down. Let it up. Push it down and hold it. You down? Yep. Okay. And the pedal goes to the floor, right? Okay, let up. Now I'm going to check the master. Okay, we're over on the driver's side now. We've finished the passenger side. I like to do the farthest away from the master cylinder first. Make sure the air's out of it. So I got my son in here. Push the pedal down. Let it up. Down. Up. Down and hold it. Now we crack the bleeder. His pedal will go to the floor. Lots of fluid and pressure out. I tighten this bleeder up. Okay, let up. Push it down. Let up. Push it down. Let up. Push it down and hold it. Down. Hold it. Lots of fluid. Didn't see any air. Didn't see any last time either. I gravity bled it. Okay, now I'm going to tighten this up. All right, now let up. Press the pedal down. How's it feel? Hard as a rock?
Yeah.
Fairly high up too? Should be pretty high now.
Yeah.
Okay, good with new calipers. Okay, let up. We're good. Now all we got to do is tighten up our spindle nut to 180 foot-pounds with a torque wrench. Tighten our wheels up and test drive. We're ready to rock and roll. Grandma will be happy. Okay, got the torque wrench on here. We're gonna torque the axle nuts up to 180 foot-pounds. Let's hear that click again. Hold the brake tight. Got my son holding the brake. Turn it to the right. Hold it there and hold the brake all the way down. Takes a lot of force, 180 foot-pounds. Okay, now turn all the way left and do the same thing. We'll do both sides. You gotta torque up the axle nut and then bend the tab over. Got her? Hold it tight. Okay, that's it. Now we're just gonna put the wheels on it. We topped off the brake fluid. It's been bled, all the new calipers, new wheel bearings, new backing plates, new GT style racing drilled slotted rotors, ceramic brake pads, and lubed everything up. And we're going to get Grandma's Hot Wheels Subaru Crosstrek right back to her. We'll talk to you next time. Okay, we got everything buttoned up on both sides. I double checked for leaks on the bleeder, on the hose, on the seal, on the crush washers. I've got the inch and a quarter, probably 30, what are they, 34, 5, 6 millimeter nuts tightened up to 180. And we got a good pedal and the brake fluid's full, no leaks. Now we're ready to put her back together. I'm gonna throw the old lug nuts on it. I know these tires are a lot lighter than my trip tires. Should hand tighten them a little bit so you don't cross thread them. If you want to cheat, just use your socket. Get them on there a little ways. If possible. No, this deep socket won't allow it. Get them on there a little bit because I've seen people cross thread them before. See that? They don't even get on there all the way. Little baby lug nuts. Should have had my son tighten these up. He's got agile fingers there. He could get them in there. Brand new lugs here, so studs. There we go. You always want to get them started because I've seen them cross-threaded. I haven't done it, but then you ruin the stud right away. And then we're gonna get these torqued up, and then we can take it off jack stands and give it a test drive. And she should drive like a fairly new car again. Get rid of some road noise, some good brake pedal, and stop on a dime. Okay, I'll check them again after I let the vehicle down. Okay, my son and I are in here for a road test in Grandma's car. And seats shoved right up into the dash. This thing's down here. But we're going to go for a test drive, test the brakes out, go down the road. We'll check for wheel bearing play, anything, any issues, any noises. Okay, this is every time we get in Grandma's car. This thing hits me in the forehead. And this in my chest. The radio's super loud. The fan's cranking. Defroster in my face. Can't hear a thing. Alright. There we go. Now we'll give it a test ride. Alright, we'll run down to the lake and see what we got here. I'll put my windows up. Get it nice and quiet in here. Turn this stuff all off. Alright, steering wheel's nice and straight. Of course I didn't adjust any steering, but the wheel bearing's tight or brake drag and it'll make you pull. It doesn't pull. Try my first brake. Ooh, stops nice and quick here. Car's coming behind me, so I gotta get going here, but got a lot of pep. Giddy up and go here. We got no wheel shake. Steering wheel's nice and smooth. I probably drive half as fast as my mother does. She's a little hot rod. This Subaru runs really good. Good on gas. Real tight steering. Well, I feel that it's a lot quieter now. It was grinding, growling, wobbling, and the steering wheel, no shake, no nothing. Road's bumpier and crazy and curvy, but now we're coming onto the lake here. Wish we lived at the lake, but we don't. Now there's a little rattle in the back of her car. Ooh, they're out there. Kayaks. But I think her car is a fix. I think Grandma's gonna be real happy with it. Then we'll turn around here at the lake and we'll probably call it a wrap. It's a fix. Alright, well thank you. I think this is a fix. Grandma's car is all set. Now I could use a shower. I'm a nasty mess. Only one cut knuckle. And thank you for watching. Please subscribe and hit the like button. We're hoping to put up some new videos. My son and I have got a lot of activities coming up. We're going to be building, we're going to be repairing, we're going to be welding, painting, you name it.